Gan, and I am a senior from Farragut High School. And so it took me 7 hours to get here, and I'd like to thank my dad for driving me here first. So as for my previous experience with AI, I think it started in my junior year with my AP research project, where I used AI to compose music. And its capabilities really shocked me back then. And ever since, I've continued to do research, this time with AI in healthcare, where we're trying to make a chatbot that can better interact with patients. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity to sort of branch out and see AI from yet another perspective.
So hi, my name is John Miller. I teach math and finance at Hopkins University, and I have to caution you, I'm not an expert at AI. I was called in at the last minute because the true expert here is Nick, and the other expert broke an arm, I believe. But I have taught students a bit about AI and ChatGPT and so forth, and how to use it. And so so maybe I want to say a few things about that to get started. So first of all, one thing to know is that not only do you probably know more about AI in the classroom than I do, but our students know more than both of us. They've been using ChatGPT and other tools for over a year now. They are, the second thing to know is that these tools are a lot more capable than we realize. If you were to try something out and it doesn't work the first time, that's not because these large language models and so forth aren't effective yet. It's just that you haven't given it the right prompt. Our students, because they're motivated to do whatever it is they want to do with ChatGPT, have become very effective prompt engineers. They know how to get it to do what they want it to do. What I recommend is, some of us have used ChatGPT. I started using it maybe 6 months ago. You have to try it. Like any technology, it's a tool that gets better with practice, and it takes an investment in time. But we know this is where the future is headed, where you have to know about these tools, at least know what our students know, at least that. And hopefully we can learn a bit more than them and then show them a path where we can, a path towards to better understanding how large language models work, what lies underneath them, and how they can use them effectively in their student lives and going on as professionals. Another thing I would say is, at the moment we're in a bit of a gold rush in terms of different companies that are selling essentially sort of overlays over top of GPT-3 or GPT-4. And I would say just go slowly with these tools. Try them out before you purchase them. And also, I would suspect that a lot of your schools, you may be the go-to person at the school that people are asking about these kind of things, if you're interested in artificial intelligence and interested in STEM. So if we can try to, the more that we know about it, the more that we become our local expert, and help everyone else and hopefully guide them into not going on a wrong path in terms of adopting tools that you may pay a lot of money for, but don't really have much uptake in terms of use. So a few use cases that I've seen people are doing. So of course, for students, for solving problems, whether appropriately or inappropriately, they're using that. They're using them as almost a first go-to now for tutorials. So for some students, I've seen they use ChatGPT now for everything. Before even going to Google or Wikipedia, they're using ChatGPT. If they want, for example, please explain to me probability, but at the level of a 10th grader, and they will ask that. Also useful for generating feedback. right? They can write their own essay, if they do write their own essay. And they can have ChatGPT or other large language model, tell them about, give me some commentary in this essay and how it can be improved. As well, you can give it a question, it can give you an answer, right? So for teachers, we can use them to help create instructional resources. I hate PowerPoint, I can't stand it. This is the only PowerPoint slide I've probably made in a while. But these tools can help you put together different kind of graphics and slides and so forth. I use it for a lot of code generation. I'm a terrible coder, so this helps me a lot. And also for assessment. So if you want to, if you want to have like 200 different multiple choice questions in a certain topic put together inside of a minute, it can do these things very quickly at scale. So I think that's one use case. And then also help us generate feedback. So I write a lot of letters of recommendation. Next year I'm going to get ChatGPT to help me, not because it does a better job than I do for some of these things. So a couple things to be aware of though. If you're looking at using these tools and having your students use these tools, you need to be aware of privacy issues, FERPA. If you put in students' names into ChatGPT, that's personal identifiable information. That's a no-no. For students 13 and under, there's also COPA, right? A lot of these tools they're not allowed to use under their terms of service. So there are a lot of these issues. So eventually, next year when you have a panel like this, probably it won't be an engineer, it'll be probably a lawyer coming to discuss these things with you. And then finally, as we're trying to learn about AI, there are a lot of free resources available. We don't have to go out and pay for really anything. There's so much available out there. I want to make a particular recommendation. Where I started was a Coursera course by a professor at Vanderbilt who has a free course on prompt engineering. Well, it's free if you don't pay for the certificate. and all that video is available. And in addition, he's got a second course called Advanced Data Analytics. And that's all about running, not just generating code with ChatGPT, but it runs the code inside what's called a sandbox. So it runs its own code, it sees its own output. If there are errors, it fixes its own code. And so these capabilities are really quite extraordinary. So if you haven't ever had the chance to play around with these things, I really recommend it.
And so I'd like to think of AI as this positive tool that we can really use to make education better. And I think one of the best areas that we can do this is personalized learning. So I know from my experience when I was learning things like math and science, I would always go online and search there first, whether it was stuff like Coursera or Khan Academy. And the thing is that there's just so many resources out there that it can seem overwhelming on where to start. And especially as you're younger, I have some sort of like mathematical habits that I still carry for me since when I was 5 years old. And it's really important to build these good foundations first. And so what I think AI can do is to be sort of a personalized tutor for everyone, where it can perfectly adapt to what your style of learning is and give you the right feedback. And I just think that this could be the next use case of AI in education. Maybe if you have some thoughts on that, we can sort of have like back and forth, and I can give you more ideas.
Yeah, to be a Q&A panel. So does anyone have any questions out there, or things that are on their mind, or they want to, or maybe opinions they want to talk about, because everyone's got an opinion?
I'd be curious what you think a classroom would look like where that personalization was fully realized and adopted. I would imagine that there would still be somebody who's facilitating the learning modules, but that as the tool is used to help personalize it, what would you envision it as? I guess.
That is a very good question. So as of right now, in my own classes that I'm in, AI is still not like a prevalent tool, because I know students still use like ChatGPT informally, but it is not like something that is heavily used by the teachers yet. And so because this is still something that is in the future, what I'd imagine is that every student is going to have a computer with their own personal AI assistant, and the teacher can sort of shift to like a more supporting role. So instead of like having to focus on teaching all of the class at the same time, they can go between student and student and answer their questions more individually to sort of supplement the information that the AI is giving them.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, you're still in very early stages. I mean, certainly this kind of adaptive learning is where things are going, but I haven't seen it yet. But I do think what you're going to see over the next several months to a year is there's going to be a lot of different products rolled out that people are going to want to demo to you. So I suggest just signing up for demonstrations, or let the salespeople come in and show the product and just see what's out there and try it and see what it's able to do. Some of these things will have capabilities that may blow you away. Some may be just slight modifications of what you can already do on ChatGPT.
Have you had any experience with code optimization? Is it good at, does it optimize code very well?
I haven't had any experience with code optimization, but certainly it can do a lot more. It can do a lot more than just generate code. You can write your own code and it can debug it. You can have your own code. It can put in comments and so on. So it can do. I've seen examples of it refactoring code. So there's a lot of different things that are being done. Whether it can figure out a way to do things more quickly. Sometimes I've seen it do that, but whether it gets the optimal thing, I don't know. I think that's they're not. It's not. All these things. Whenever you have use GPT or other language models to generate code, you always need to. An important thing is you always need to check the code before you run it, because otherwise you can do damage to your computer potentially.
Yeah.
So I have a quick comment. I'm working for Siemens, and when I pass some requirement, do some special curve fitting to a junior engineer, and the surprise, he finished the coding in roughly 5 minutes. I said, "What? How you do so fast?" Because based on my experience, it take a little bit while. He said, "Well, I have a ChatGPT open. Basically, I translate your language into prompt words into ChatGPT. Boom. All the fitting algorithms right out in like a section, and will describe all the steps. So what I'm trying to tell you is, I can see for junior software engineer from now on, they are facing great challenges from ChatGPT. They can do junior level coding for sure, no question about it.
Yeah, certainly they've done a study of coders how they use ChatGPT, and it breaks down into the less experienced coders versus the more experienced coders. For people less experienced, it has a great benefit. It gets them up the learning curve much more quickly.
Yeah.
And for the experienced coders, they don't use it for learning so much as for productivity, that they're already highly productive coders, but using GPT can make them much more productive.
I wanted to ask you particularly, what was your education like during COVID? Were you virtual?
Yeah, I took my freshman year virtually, and I didn't like it at all. I still feel like at that time, education technology wasn't as advanced as it is today. I mean, our schools were still trying to figure out how to get Canvas and the other learning management systems to get those online first. And so as a result of that, I missed out on a lot of the other important things of education besides the learning part itself, mainly the social interaction with my friends and with my teachers, And I feel like, personally, I'm a good student, so I didn't mind that as much. I could still get my work done. But I know that for a lot of my other peers, that wasn't the case.
And I empathize with that with you. I was just wondering if you think there are any cogent lessons learned from that terrible experience in terms of how we can adapt these LLMs to our classroom, because I feel like it seemed like that there was a big bifurcation in the learning. For those that were tech-oriented, there wasn't as much learning loss. You said yourself, you felt like there was learning loss, particularly when we're talking about social-emotional development. But there were other kids that lost everything because they, particularly adolescent developments where they very easily get off task. They would just go down a rabbit hole of YouTube or whatever, and the very little learning was done in the classroom for that particular content. I'm not sure how I would adapt this into a classroom in a responsible way to be able to allow the learning to happen in many modalities for many different students. Like you said, personalization is a really great aspect of LLMs, but how can we curate that well enough so that those that easily get off task, and I guess off task is kind of a relative term because a lot of kids learn a lot by trying to break things, right?
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
So I will preface this by saying that in my virtual year, what I did was I would try to get all my work done before lunch and just do whatever for the rest of the day. So the thing about getting off task, it applies to like students at all levels, I'd say.
Okay.
And another thing is just about, from this experience, I think we realized that students and teachers need to become more tech literate, not just in AI, but in general.
And I just want to piggyback for 1 second with one question and second question. I do agree with Nick's answer, and to further go into your question, West Virginia is one of 3 states that has actually implemented a guideline for how to implement LMS in the classroom. So for everyone that signed up and attended, you'll actually get that PDF for their guidelines of how they're suggesting their teachers to implement. So that can kind of help you with a pathway of how you can go about it before Virginia takes that step as well. Because they're only one of 3 states that have actually initiated that.
I want to commend you for your mindset during the virtual process that we had. So great job for prioritizing your own learning and taking it upon yourself. So in what I'm noticing with my students is, and which is a concern, and I just wanted to, from both your feedback, is from a student's lens, ChatGPT, Copilot, there's another one, Grammarly Go, and I'm sure there are a whole bunch more. The reliability that I'm noticing with the students is it's quite high because it's like, I'll just have them write it. I don't have to write it. And there was a very powerful conversation on NPR on this exact topic where they had 2 high school students. And what I loved about what the high school students said is we also have to check our own moral compass to make sure what we are using AI for, that it's our work and not AI's. Because then also as I think through all of this, my biggest concern is, are they going to be able to problem solve, be able to communicate using their own words as opposed to AI's words? And what about college applications? What digital footprint? Is that something they use in college? That would be a question for you. So these are all questions I have and wonders I have about, the reliability and then digital footprint.
So one thing I will say about this thing is that AI is here to stay. I don't think banning AI in the classroom is going to do any good because I feel like students and teachers also don't want to feel like there should be this level of like policing within the classroom. It's like implicitly you don't trust your students. But teachers are already doing other ways that are not technologically based to get students to do more of their own work. So for example, In my literature classes, all of our tests and writing, we mostly do those in class. We limit the amount of things that we can take home. And as for the conversation on NPR, I can kind of relate to this because I've used ChatGPT myself as a sort of feedback tool. I'll give ChatGPT the rubric for an essay, and then I'll give it my essay and just ask it, what would you score this on the rubric, and then how can I use it to improve? And I think this is an acceptable use case because I'm just getting feedback. When it comes to the actual revisions, I'm still the person that actually has to do and implement them. And so that is the thing for these students, is to kind of say, I still have to go through the thought process of going through A to B by myself, but I can use AI as like a springboard to start giving me ideas to do that.
So, since I'm a math teacher, I haven't had to deal as much with this in terms of writing assignments, but somewhat. And so a couple of things. Johns Hopkins does have, and maybe we can share this link later, it does have a set of guidelines on suggestions about AI use in the classroom and what's appropriate use for students. And first of all, they encourage us now going forward in our syllabus to actually spell out very clearly what would be acceptable use and what's not acceptable use, to make it clear to students, because often they don't know what's acceptable or not acceptable. And with regards to assessments, there's really two basic strategies. One is avoidance, right? I think a lot of high-stake assessments now need to be done in person, but that still leaves room for low-stake assessments, right? They can be done at home. If there's no benefit to cheating because it's so low stakes, then why cheat, right? Except maybe to save time. But then the other approach, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, I think we should be doing both, is what we call the activation approach. We're actually proactively using these tools as part of the assignment. So you can imagine a relatively highly complex task that may have a lot of steps where the AI system is helping you achieve it, right? And then you can ask for then a transcript of the entire back and forth conversation as part of the submissions. What were all the steps, the scaffolding, so to speak, of how they got to the final product rather than just seeing only the final product.
I have colleagues who are teaching at the university level and recognizing that these models are always getting better. I would appreciate your comments on an approach that some of them have had success with, which is to provide a prompt to the thing to like write an essay on something relevant to the course, and then kind of have the student have the activity, the students critique it. Like, are these actual real references that actually exist? You know, are these factually correct? Is the information in this essay in response to this prompt actually correct? And what they find, and this is like, biology, life sciences, evolution type topics, is that often, at least for now, a lot of these references are fake. A lot of this material is not correct or incomplete. And I'm just wondering, is that a pedagogical tool that has value in high school level as well, or?
Yeah, so I would assume anything that's good at the college level will also be good at the high school level. But that said, I have heard a lot have the AI ask ChatGPT to write something for you and then critique it. And a couple of cautions. One is, like, things have advanced so much. So the original ChatGPT 3.5 that came out a year ago, it didn't have access to the internet. It hallucinated a lot of facts and so forth. The new ChatGPT 4 and Google Bard and so forth, they don't do that. They cite facts. You still have to be careful. Occasionally says wrong things, but they're far, far improved, so that the sort of mistakes that you think would have come up a year ago don't happen. Also, I can ask my language model to critique itself and give it. So there's always like ways around. If there's always ways around to use these language models to avoid having to do this work if you really want to. So it's not a foolproof thing. But certainly, but what is important is to have literacy with these large language models. So to do the things that you're doing, to try things out, to see where the problems are. So I do see that students are already doing this on their own, but if we can give them some additional guidance, in the classroom, here's how to use it, they may not be aware of all the capabilities that these tools have. And also, what I see from the students is they really enjoy using these tools. It gets them a lot of engagement. They get excited about it. They're not just listening to me drone on the whole time. So yeah, I think all these things, if we can fit them into our busy schedules, then we should be trying them out in the classroom.
So about the thing about getting students to critique ChatGPT's work and about ChatGPT hallucinating references, I have heard a few students in my school is like, oh, I'm going to use ChatGPT like Google. And I'm like, no, don't do that. And I have known in my AP research or seminar classes, this was not an issue when I was a student. It's an issue like this year, but there have been a non-zero amount of students that have had their essays flagged by these AI detectors. And I'd kind of like to make a note about that, is that AI detectors, you have to sort of use them with a grain of salt. I checked OpenAI's policy, and even that says that these detectors aren't 100% true. And I just suppose from the instructor's perspective, you have to be extremely sure before you make an accusation that something was made by an AI, not student, because false positives can happen.
Yeah, that's right. They're only the accuracy of these detectors is only between 50 and 80%. So you might use them for general surveillance just to get an idea, but I wouldn't be making accusations to a student if there's false positives, there's false negatives. They're not really a reliable tool. And in fact, they'll probably become less reliable over time because there's different products already available that you can take your AI-generated text and say, make this more human-like.
Yeah, I'd say because even when I put my own essays, I wrote myself, it still said it. There's a 33% chance that an AI wrote it. So, yeah.
And what are you going to do with that as a teacher, right? So I don't think these aren't.
I think there are other more ways to tell whether a human wrote it, because some of these tools, what they do is that they go and look at the edit history of the document. So if you can see that there's a lot of writing and rewriting, there's a good chance that the student themselves wrote it. If there's a lot of suspicious pasting, that's also something to look out for. So I think these tools would also be a good indicator.
That's true. The revision histories can be very useful.
We have one more question.
Yes.
So I, being a high school math teacher, I would like to figure out how to draw the balance between, generating feedback is a great idea. But if a student is going to use these AI tools to kind of do the work for them, and then justify saying that, why do we need to learn this? Because we have these tools and we can use them at any time. So what is the purpose in learning these? So for a fact that, growing up, I did not use a calculator, so my basics, are very strong in terms of, just being able to do things mentally. Whereas I see students use a calculator for a lot of things these days, right? But now getting to the higher level where they think there's no purpose in learning this because the calculator can do it. So are we shifting gears to where they are, not supposed to know these things and they're just going to plug it into these tools that will help them? And, using it as a feedback to check if you're doing it correctly is great, but if you're just using it to, do all the work for you, then how are you going to master and how are you going to understand what is actually happening?
I agree completely that it's important for all the students to develop an intuition about how things work. And so if they're just putting in prompts and cutting and pasting, they're not going to develop that. So when I think about AI in the classroom, what I really think about is how to teach about how it works. What's underneath it. The fact that you have this input string of words, and then it figures out the probability of a whole bunch of words and what's the most probable few words that come next, and then it picks that word. And then it goes on to the next word, and so on. And to teach students how it works and how to use it more effectively. So, but it's certainly not a replacement for all these other things. To use ChatGPT or these language models most effectively, you need to be able to write really good prompts. And that's creative writing. That's thinking. You still have to have ideas it's leveraging your ideas. You're taking a few sentences of prompts and making several paragraphs, but you still need to have the good idea. If you don't have an idea and you're not putting it on paper, you're not going to get something good back out of it.
I'm going to sort of give like a caveat to this, is that especially with math and like physics and science, the higher level you go, the worse ChatGPT is, honestly. Because you need to sort of build the fundamentals first so that when you get to these higher levels of classes, you can still be able to figure out everything yourself.
Oh, I completely agree. So like, I had a student who, we haven't done differentiation and integration, but solved the equation using that. And I was like, but we haven't done this in class. And she wouldn't admit that she had used photomath on doing it. So, there are so many of these tools, but if a student's not motivated, right, and they are academic students, I don't think this is really helping, right? It's not.
That is true.
So then in that case, where do we draw the balance?
I'd say that, especially for some of these assessments, for like integration, there are some methods that you learn in class. It's like, we're only practicing this method now, and I think that's the way to catch whether students use ChatGPT, because if their solution includes like some method that wasn't discussed in class yet, that's a pretty clear indicator.
But the beauty of math is solving it in many different ways, so I don't think we should hold a student, able to solve it in a different way.
That is true, but like for that assessment, if you're only testing that method, it's just to like make sure that they're actually doing the work themselves first. Like there's no harm in exploring these other methods.
I agree. I'm going to have to interject for 1 second. I think that we can continue this conversation on and on, but we do have one follow-up speaker that is going to continue this topic in a different lane. But I do think that the conversation, it was great to have a panel from a professional perspective and a student perspective, and could probably garner us to have a webinar where we include the STEM Lyceum with the students, because it really gave us a unique view from one point. If we bring in another student, we can tackle addressing all students on that diaspora for where their talents might lie. So thank you.